Sweet. All right, cool. So, Taylor, take it away. Show us your magic.
Good deal. I guess for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Taylor Ackerman, and I go by Studiolooong on Instagram and the SVS forum and every place else because I share a name with a beauty queen professional dancer.
Oh,
And
nice.
she has red hair just like me, and she is ranked above me on Google. So I'm like, I'll just use something else because
I
that's
was
confusing.
wondering about that. I always panic because I always double check, like who's who and what, and there's always different handles. And yeah, I was just like, why does she just call herself Taylor online? I mean, come on. But no, that makes sense.
Yeah. Can't fight with the teen beauty queen professional dancer. If anyone knows that show Dance Moms, if you've seen that at all, it was like a reality show on TLC. That's the studio she dances at. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
just thought I'd give that up. But I'll walk through my process today. I always start my drawings in actual pencil. So here on my screen, you can see a drawing that I did earlier today, and it's a pencil drawing. Got the actual drawing right here, and I've just scanned it in. So far, that's all I've done to it, and I'll walk you through. I actually use alpha masks in Photoshop to do some different things with the line work that I think gives an interesting effect and preserves a lot of the like pencil textures, but gives me a little bit more control over like the color and quality of my line work.
Nice.
So hopefully we'll be able to see these menus, and I'll just walk through it on this one. But if not, I do have that.
I'll be so
Where I've
happy to
taken
see an alpha
screenshots
mask
of everything.
demonstration.
So the first thing I want to do is just make sure that my pencil drawing looks great. Bring up the properties, just not on the right screen.
There we go.
And then I can do like a levels adjustment, make sure that the paper is actually white, and then make the drawing a bit darker.
Okay, yeah.
So what the alpha mask is going to do is it's going to take like every pixel with respect to transparency. So a fully black pixel will be whatever color I tell the line work to be, and like a 50% gray pixel will be like the same color as the black line work, but 50% transparency. So when I draw under it, it'll interact a little bit differently than like a multiply layer would.
Yeah.
And then I have some blue pencil in here. I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but I want to knock that out.
Oh, I can see a tiny bit of it. Now that you mentioned it, I can see a tiny bit of it.
Yeah, so I'll just bring the saturation all the way down. And then I'm going to want to flatten all of this so that I just have one layer.
Nice.
And then I'm going to Command A to select all and Command C to copy. So I've just copied this entire flat rasterized image. I'm going to go to Window and Channels. My Channels is already open over here. Oops, I already did this earlier.
Oh, nice.
Okay. I want to get rid of that. There we go. Okay. So when you open up the Channels tab, I'm in RGB. I work in RGB because Photoshop gives you a lot of options in RGB that it doesn't give you when you're in CMYK. So if you're in CMYK color mode, this won't work.
Okay.
But when you open up the Channels tab, it'll look like this. You press this little like paper with the folded corner icon to create a new channel. It'll create Alpha 1. This is an alpha channel, just not part of your RGB build, and it'll be all black. But then since I've copied that image that was on this RGB layer, it hasn't gone away, it's still there.
Yeah.
I can paste it onto my alpha layer, and it's basically just copied the artwork onto this separate channel. I can edit my RGB thing, and it doesn't affect this alpha channel at all. They're like separate pages almost. It's weird, but you don't want to like work on an alpha channel.
Okay.
What you do want to do is press this little like marching ant square icon. And what that does is it selects every white pixel on your screen with respect to transparency. So it's like 50% selected a gray pixel and excluded all of the black pixels.
Okay.
So then I'm going to go to select inverse because I don't want the white pixels. I actually want the dark pixels. So now it's selected all of my pencil marks with respect to transparency.
Nice.
Okay, then I want to get rid of this alpha layer. I don't want to be on it anymore. So I go back to my RGB. That's all I need from the channels. I can go back into my layers now and create a solid color fill. And I can choose whatever color I want this to be.
Oh, super
Normally
cool.
I go with a pretty dark color. I'll do brown, or I'll do kind of like a purpley blue color.
And you could change this at any time, even later in the drawing, I assume.
You
Painting, I
can,
assume,
because it's a color fill, yeah. And then what you're also going to want to do is get rid of this background layer and put another solid color
Nice.
in the background. So then
Okay,
I can go
cool.
in, yeah, and like if I want to pick a new color halfway through my drawing, it just gives you a lot of flexibility. I think for this one I might go with like a brown right now.
And digitized pencil. Awesome.
Yes, and the other cool thing about this now is this isn't a multiply layer, so if I color underneath it, it doesn't get any darker, but also like the background is transparent. There's no more white, so I can change the background color, and you can see that my line work stays on there. And I can pick a background color that's darker, and I can say I want my line work to be white, and that works too, because it's not interacting. It's actually selected the pixels and made them separate. I don't want to do that.
That is fantastic. That is like a trick I wish I'd known about when I first started, because I would have never started drawing digitally. I just would have stuck with pencil and paper.
Yeah, it's been really great. And then I can basically just use this as like a coloring book. And since my layer that I'm coloring on over here is underneath my color fill layer, I'm coloring underneath the line work. If I then decide like I want to pop some highlights or something, and I may want to draw on top of my line work, I can go in with a lighter color and say I want to like add a highlight to like this bench over here. I can do that on top of the line work.
Yeah.
Then
Cool.
That's basically how I make an alpha mask. That's how I'll prep, and then I'll just go into color, and it's just like a big adult coloring book.
Nice. No, that's fantastic. That's
super fun and relaxing.
Yeah, that's how what's his name? David Hone did the alpha mask thing too when he showcased his stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's just such a cool tool. I wish I'd known about it.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about rasterize the image where that was very fast. I couldn't get it.
So at the beginning, basically you just want it to be like one flat image layer. So when you're doing edits to your image, if you're going in and like changing the hue saturation, you can see it's creating over in the layers tab this hue saturation layer. And you don't want stacks of layers when you're going to copy your artwork to paste it into an alpha mask. So you just want to make sure to select everything and merge layers so it's just one flat layer before you copy it.
Thank you.
The dark magic of Photoshop.
Yeah, I do graphic design as a day job, so I have to poke around Photoshop a lot more than someone who like just uses it for digital painting. So there's a lot of features in there that like you would never know existed if you were just going in and using like the brushes and doing digital painting stuff. Most of it not applicable to illustration though. But then I've got like the colors that I like to use most in like multiple Photoshop libraries. When I was drawing my old lady mermaid with her fish cats, I
Oh
was
yeah.
using a lot of these colors. I did a picture of robots with balloons and I used these colors, and I always just save these swatches. The girls stargazing, I used these.
Mm-hmm.
And normally these are like the new colors that I've used, and I'm still pulling from a lot of these. I like using a lot of warmer tones. Even my blues are like warmer blues. I always use warm reds. I almost never use a cool red. And I almost never use a straight red. They're normally like these very like orangey red colors.
Mm-hmm. So we got a question from Josh. He says, "Are you building these colors on your own, or are you getting them from places like is it Cooler or Color, like an outside source to tell you what colors work well together, or are you just kind
A
of picking
lot
them?"
of times I will go onto the internet and find illustrations that I really like, and I will
Okay, yeah.
steal colors from them and build swatches out of those. And then as I'm illustrating, I'll figure out which ones work for me and which ones don't. So I don't think I still have the JPEG, but there was one that I really liked, and it was of this girl in her bedroom reading, and I just sampled a bunch of colors from that illustration and built out a palette kind of like this. And I started illustrating with it, and I was really liking it, but all the greens were too dark. So I just like go in and edit these swatches, like lighten up what I need to, and then keep working, and it kind of turns into my own palette that way.
Nice.
Yeah. So I can
Okay,
go in
cool.
and
Everyone's got
color a
such
bit of
different ways of
this.
finding colors that work well together.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have
Yeah.
typical colors you use for the pencil work?
Um, I'll normally like a dark brown or a dark purple is what I lean on most. And then the cool thing about this is I can also flatten this, and I can color the line work, just the line work. Rasterize layer. So now this is like just a brown image, and my line work is being masked. So I can go into this and say, I think I want this bush to be more green, like the lines to be more green.
Okay, yeah.
That's still yellow. And I can go in and kind of color this a bit more green. Maybe too dark.
Okay.
Now you can see.
Would you normally do that like after it had been mostly colored, or do you like to do that when it's like just the isolated line work?
No, normally my first step would be going through and flatting colors,
Okay.
which I don't know how exciting that will be to watch, but I
Yeah,
can
fair enough. Well,
kind of go in and do a rough job.
what tool do you like to do to flat the colors? How about that? Like, assume this is like an isolated spot or a vignette,
Um,
whatever it is. Is it a spot? Is it a vignette? I'm not sure. But you know what I mean.
mhm. I normally just go in like this and like
Sweet.
color, and it's not the most efficient, but I like doing it, and
Yeah, it gives it like a feeling like someone actually colored it instead of used a tool to pick
yeah,
out
tool.
shapes.
Yeah, I like the kind of like rough, like actual brush colored edge it gives it.
Yeah,
And
me.
then once I color around the edges, I'll take like a big brush and just swatch in the middle. And if I know that something's in front of something else, I can just kind of color over it,
Yes.
because I'll flatten the next thing in front of it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do too. I get just a nice rough edged brush and I go all the way around the object and I bucket fill the inside.
I'm so used to my iPad. I've been working on the iPad a lot because I really like that I can like sit on the couch and
And just kind of happily scribble away.
yes.
Absolutely.
And I don't like that I can't pinch on this. I love my Huey on,
Oh,
but
yep. No, whenever
can't
I go,
pinch and like tap to undo.
I know whenever I go from the iPad to my Cintiq, I always find myself desperately trying to tap with my fingers and
Stabbing my
yeah.
screen.
But then whenever I try to draw something on a piece of paper, I find myself double tapping the piece of paper. So
I haven't done that.
Yep.
I think sorry, my dog is upset about something. Snoopy, it's okay, buddy.
Oh, his name is Snoopy?
His name is Snoopy. I haven't named any of my animals.
Oh, it's adorable.
I adopt them from the animal shelter, and I adopted Snoopy when he was 7. And I'm like, okay, is Snoopy just like a name you gave him, or like is Snoopy a name that he knows? And they're like, oh no, he knows his name. I'm like, okay,
Fair enough.
it's staying Snoopy because he's already had enough change in his life. I don't need to take his name away from him.
I was going to call him Socrates, but it'd be an uphill battle.
Yeah, and he doesn't look like the Charlie Brown Snoopy at all, so
Yeah.
I always tell people his name is Snoopy, and they're like, "Oh, he doesn't look like Snoopy." I'm like, "Well,
He doesn't
that's
have
the name
to.
he knows."
Oh, it's adorable. So do you find you use a lot of hotkeys while you're doing this? Or do you like to just navigate the menus and pick the tools with the cursor? And...
I don't know any hotkeys that are more than 2 buttons. Like, the ones that are like Control, Shift, something or another. I know none of those.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And particularly when I'm using the touch screen, like this doesn't take that long. Like, it's not so much effort. I know when you're using a mouse, it takes a little bit more time, but I do like the R to rotate. I use that a lot. And when I'm drawing physically, I spin my paper around a lot too, to try to get the best angle. But yeah, I don't know any super fancy shortcuts.
Okay, cool. You never know. Once in a while, someone's like, oh, yeah, no, I got all my hotkeys mapped out. I got the keyboard right here. And
I just think that it would probably take me longer to learn the shortcuts than it would for me to like actually just use the menu.
Yep. That's why I've got my hotkeys mapped out to a little third-party gaming pad.
Oh, yeah, that'd be nice.
This key is copy.
For a while, I had one of those keyboard like skin cover things. They're kind of like that like rubbery material.
Oh, yeah.
And I put that on my keyboard, and it had all the shortcuts listed out on it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then like Adobe updated too much and all the shortcuts changed and it was useless.
Ah, goddamn Adobe. Seriously.
This needs to be green back here.
So do you find you work in a lot of like different layers when you're coloring, or do you kind of like keep everything on the same layer, or?
Everything when I'm flatting, because I'm like messy like this, I just kind of like scribble all over the place, will be on its own layer.
Okay, cool.
So I'll flat one color on its own layer and I'll name it something like, this one will probably be like back bush. And then, there we go. I'll go to the next one. Back bush.
Bush.
And then I'll call this one bench. And then I'll just flat the bench. And I'm also not super worried about colors right now. I want to get like a general feeling of what colors I'm using. A lot of times I don't do color studies.
Oh, okay.
I've been trying to get better at doing color studies, but if I'm just illustrating something for fun, I'll actually flat all the colors and then just mess with it by changing the flats.
Okay, yeah.
And I'll do color studies that way because I'm like, I've got to do all this work anyway.
It is difficult to get into the habit of doing color studies. I mean, it really helps. I'm not going to lie, it really helps. But at the same time, it feels like it's just an extra step, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I feel like I do kind of do color studies. It's just in a different place in my process. So I'll just do it after I flatten these colors.
Yeah, once you've got all the shapes picked, these could be really any colors, I guess.
Yeah, because they're all on their own layer, it's easy enough to just select it and say, actually, I'd rather that be more blue. And I can play with colors that way and save out different versions and do the same thing, just not at thumbnail size.
I getcha, yeah. I do the same thing.
But I definitely always do value studies. I find that helps a lot.
Yes. I'm getting back into the value
particularly
studies.
because, yeah, my art is a lot more line-based. So trying to fine-tune that ahead of time is always good.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's always a good idea to just take a nice fat marker and be like, this shape is the many bunnies. This shape is the bench.
Yeah, and this one I didn't because I was working a little faster, but I still did some thumbnail sketches for composition. You
Yeah.
can see a super tiny one right there.
Ooh, give me
I
one
was like,
second.
I
I'm
wanna
going to
do
make it so I
some,
can see you. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
I want to do some bunnies on a bench. And then on the next page, I've kind of worked it out a bit more. A bit bigger.
Yeah.
And then my next step, for this one, I actually threw it in Procreate. I took a picture of that sketch and threw it into Procreate and sketched over it in Procreate.
Oh, nice.
Because
Okay.
I really like being able to like edit things digitally when I'm sketching. Say like this one needs to be a bit bigger, and if it's a pencil sketch, it's really hard to take this like perfect bunny pose that I've drawn and make it a tiny bit bigger. But on Procreate, I can just lasso around it. And,
Yeah, Procreate, it's easy.
yeah. So I really like working digitally in that stage of my sketching process.
Okay.
And then might have it. I do. I printed it out. That was my sketch.
Ooh, 2 seconds. It's all right. I've minimized you again. Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
So that's what it looked like in Procreate, and I just printed out a quick copy, and I've got this like really cheap, I think it was like $10 on Amazon, LED light board.
Oh, okay.
And I'll stick it on that, and then I'll trace it onto an actual piece of paper, and then I've got my final sketch, which ends up being the same size as the printout, but a lot neater.
Nice.
And I'll start with blue pencil, the color erase, however you say that.
I'm not too sure. The blue pencil everyone uses.
Yeah, I use the blue one, the red one, the purple one. I'm not super picky about the color, but it does drop out very easily because it's so faint.
Mm-hmm.
And they say it's supposed to be erasable. I don't know how erasable it actually is, but it's more erasable than a normal colored pencil.
I think it's erasable enough to the point where it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely not utterly erasable.
I do love the light boards. I have one of those and use it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. I got to check those out because they seem to be a lot more common these days.
They're not very expensive anymore. They used to be a lot more expensive because you couldn't get a solid light before there were LEDs and stuff. Before they
it was like a bulb.
Yeah, it was a bulb, and so getting it a consistent light across the whole board was difficult. But yeah, they're pretty cheap now. I mean, I live and die by mine because I do everything pretty much traditional, and it allows you to do the layering, like put your sketch behind and then build on top, and then do. If you don't like something, you can do it again and fix that, and it makes it a lot easier.
Excuse me, what was the name? What? LCD?
This has absolutely no branding on it. I got it on Amazon, and I think it was between $10 and $15. But if you look up LED drawing light board, they should come up with a lot of options. This one isn't particularly great because the place where it gets plugged in is like super narrow and the plug doesn't stick in very well, so I'm constantly battling with it because it's like just coming loose and coming unplugged. So a lot of times when I'm drawing, I actually tape the cable onto the light board, but it still works.
Sorry, do they come in different sizes as well?
They do.
Looks like it, yeah.
You can get them very small to very large.
Yeah,
I didn't realize they were that cheap. I'm using transfer paper, and then some of the lines I like for like extra stuff would be good, but for like just generally transferring it, I don't necessarily like it. Then I have to keep on erasing, and then I keep smudging.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I like about mine's so bright, mine can get bright enough that I can actually trace onto watercolor paper. So
Oh,
I can
wow.
actually I can put it underneath, turn it on to full brightness, and I can see through on watercolor paper.
Yeah, a
Holy
lot of my
I've been
times.
actually doing it with watercolors. I'll do my sketch and everything, put it underneath, and then watercolor over top.
Does yours have a
Man.
brand unlike hers?
Yeah, I got it a while ago. Let me look it up.
Take your time.
Oh, that's
Oh man,
fantastic.
I think I just got the cheapest one.
Yeah, I'm looking at a whole bunch of them here. There's some that are super cheap, some that are a bit more expensive. They look pretty cool though. Awesome. Oh, I was going to ask you a question.
Honestly, I just tape my work right to it. I'll tape my work right to it, and then you can take it with you as well. Like mine came with a sleeve. Right in the sleeve, take it with you.
Yeah, I use washi tape. You can see my washi tape still stuck on it. Because the washi tape comes off really easy. It doesn't damage your paper or leave residue on the board. And it is like if you want to like go sit on a couch or a more comfortable chair, you don't need to also have a drawing board. And since mine was only like $10, I'm like, even if I end up scratching it up, I'll just spend another $10 and get another LED light board. But yeah, mine is so bright too that sometimes for my drawing paper that I use for pencil, I end up having to stick more sheets of paper under it to kind of mask my sketch.
So does yours only have one light setting?
No, I can turn it up and down, but the lowest light setting isn't that much lower than the top light setting.
Oh, okay. The brand of mine is Artograph. Artograph. I got the 12 by 17 inch. I've really liked that because I can fit a legal sheet on there as well. So, and like when I put stuff on there, I always turn it slightly because like it's easier to draw at an angle. So that's been nice.
Nice. Okay, awesome.
I'm sure it's not as expensive anymore. Let's see. No, now it's more expensive than I don't think I paid that much for it. I don't know, maybe I did. Right now on Amazon, it's like the one I got is $279 now. $279.
Holy crap. Wow. I'm looking at things that are as cheap as $20.
Yeah. I like the 10, 15.
Yeah, mine was like 14. Which is probably why it doesn't have a brand.
Yeah, well, and I bought mine a while ago. I mean, mine's probably, I'd say I've had it for 5 years at least.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know if I spent that much on it then. I don't think I did. I recall it being cheaper as well.
No, fair enough.
Maybe there's an equivalent one, just cheaper and newer.
Yeah.
Super
well,
cool.
There could be one of that brand. I have the older version, and that's could be why it's more expensive too.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any Artographs on Canadian Amazon though, but there's a bunch of other brands here. Huion's got one, or Huion? I'm not too sure. Huion. There we go.
That's what I call it. I use a Huion drawing monitor. That's what I'm drawing on right now.
I tried
I do not
Huion.
have a Cintiq.
I think I tried the Huion a little early in their development. I think they're a lot better now.
Yeah,
I didn't like it
mine.
when I got it.
I have a Canvas 22 Pro, and I got mine right before they introduced pen tilt. But I don't use a ton of pen tilt, so that doesn't matter to me. But they have pen tilt now.
That was another big thing that was a deal breaker for me. Was I use tilt.
Oh yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, I could not tell you if their like pen tilting technology is good or not because mine doesn't have it. But in all other respects, I like drawing on my Huion. People are like, "Oh, the pen lag is much worse than Cintiq." I don't notice any of it, and I also stream using it. And if you ever want your tablet to lag, like open OBS and stream on Twitch because you'll draw a line and like wait 5 minutes and then it appears. But I haven't noticed like any significant differences between this and drawing on a Cintiq. So if you're trying to get into digital drawing and you want to try it out, but you don't want to spend $4,000 on a Cintiq, Huions are so much cheaper.
Whenever anyone asks me, should I buy a tablet, I always say, get the smallest one you can. Like, I've met so many people who have bought 27-inch Cintiqs for like $5,000, and they said, yeah, I never got into drawing, so it just kind of sits there. Like, why didn't you buy a 13-inch? Why didn't you
Oh
just
yeah,
buy a little guy?
I went with the biggest screen I could afford, so I got like the biggest Huion available, but I got a Huion instead of a Cintiq, so it was
That is
still a
fine.
fraction of the cost of
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
13-inch Cintiq. So
Yeah,
I'm like, if I hate this,
cheapest, highest quality you can.
yeah, because I do like my giant screens. But
Yeah. Someday I'll upgrade. Once this Cintiq finally breaks, which I don't know if it ever will, I will buy a new one.
I've heard that those things go strong forever, and I'm also using a 2011 iMac.
Oh yeah,
My iMac has lasted me forever.
I have a late 2009 iMac. I use it as a screen now because it's too slow to do anything.
Late 2012.
Yeah.
I wiped it a couple years ago and like reloaded the operating system, and it's like as good as new.
Yeah. If I could, I would regress my operating system as far as I could. We'll put it that way.
Oh, I didn't even regress the operating system. I just wiped it and reloaded it because it was like a bit buggy. So I just got a hard drive and pulled everything I wanted off of my computer. I got like all the image and font files and my projects, and then just wiped everything and reloaded it. It's been great.
I just did that with my MacBook.
I never work on a laptop. People are always asking, like, should I get a desktop? Should I get a laptop? MacBook Pros are so expensive. Like the iMac I'm working on has a screen that's 4 times as big as a MacBook Pro, and it's got more processing power, and I think it's probably like half the price. And so I got that, and I got an iPad. So between the iPad and the iMac, which combined are still less than the MacBook Pro, I have much more capability.
And back when you bought that iMac, that was back when they had decent quality parts, if you get what I mean.
Oh yeah, it's lasted me forever.
Yeah, totally. So flatten away. What kind of texture are you using in the brush you're using?
This is I think this is the Pastel Palooza.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's just got a bit of a rough edge.
Kyle's brushes.
Yes.
What fun. Oh yeah, Josh, I don't think I'll ever buy it. Sorry, Josh says I ended up building a Hackintosh because of budgeting. I don't think I'll ever buy another Mac just for pricing. Like, I built myself a cute little PC. It's adorable. And it was like $500.
I don't think I'm talented enough to build my own computer. I know people say it's a lot easier than you think.
It's like building a Lego spaceship. It is incredibly easy. It's nerve-wracking the first time you do it, but it is real easy.
Yeah. I also just like, Mac makes it really easy to just like, if I have something on my iPad, I can just say, I want this to actually be on my desktop. Like, and then it just appears.
Yeah, that's
handy. I feel like, that would be a lot more effort. Between that and my phone and my iPad, I can just snap a picture real quick on my phone and then say, I want this to be in Photoshop on my iMac. And Apple's like, okay, we'll do that for you. Without emailing or whatever else to get it there.
Yep. No, totally.
So I'll kind of skip a couple steps here.
Yeah.
After I flatten all of my colors, which I haven't done yet, but this is close enough.
Sure.
I'll go in
Show us more
my layers panel, and I'll use this so I've got the back bush layer right now, and I'll create another layer and hold Option and click to clip it to the back bush layer. So now basically what I've done is anything that I color only colors onto the back bush layer and doesn't color onto anything else. So if I want to go in and like clean up my edges later, like this bush has bled onto the back bush a little bit, but I've already gone through the process of like coloring it and making it beautiful. I can go in with my eraser tool and erase, and it'll erase the back bush layer. It'll keep whatever I've drawn. So if later I decide like, actually, I'd rather it be expanded again, everything that's clipped to it is still there, but it's just masking it. So it's a really good way to work without losing anything if you want to change it later.
Nice.
I think I'll probably I don't want to use the history eraser.
Photoshop disagrees. Photoshop knows what's best.
One of the classes that made the biggest difference in my art is that one where Will Terry talks about color.
Yes. Just watching him go, all right, we're going to go a little bit toward blue. We're going to go a little bit more saturated.
Yeah, and
orange,
I like that blew my mind. That was the first time I'd ever heard that if you're shading something that's green, the shadow isn't green, like it's a bluisher green.
Yeah.
And I started working that way, and I'm like, this is magical.
Yeah. Eventually, I always get my art to a stage where I'm like, okay, and now I'm just picking colors. A little bit more blue, a little bit more orange. The trick is the little bit.
Yeah.
Now those guys have there's like little buried bits of information in their massive library of videos, and if you watch all of them and you listen really closely and you compile all of those little tidbits, it's amazing.
Yeah, that one's the one that's probably made the biggest impact on my work.
Yeah, that's a big one for me too.
Oops. For some reason, it keeps taking away my brush tool. I think I have like a letter stuck down on my keyboard a bit because earlier I was trying to type a password into something and it just kept going. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I'm not typing.
Yeah, that'll happen.
So now I can just be like super sloppy with it because this is clipped, and then I can unclip it and it's too transparent so you didn't see anything a little bit there. But if I like scribble up here, you can't see anything. And then if I were to unclip it, it's still there.
Yep.
But it also just lets me not have to pay attention to my edges after I've declared my edges.
So is there a reason you're doing it this way instead of using Alpha Lock?
Because Alpha Lock, if I decide I don't like this after I've done it, if I'm like, oh wow, this is really sloppy and I hate it, I just hide the layer.
I getcha.
And then, goodness.
Snoopy disagrees.
They're gonna go bark at the door. But yeah, if I don't like it, I can take it away. If I want to change the color of just what I've done here, I can go through and alpha lock this layer and say like, actually, I'd rather that be like a lighter green.
Okay,
It doesn't show up at all. And then I can edit colors and play a lot that way.
Yep.
And I still have my base masks. And then once I get the bushes like to a point where I like the bushes, I'll go ahead and flatten all those clipped layers down.
Nice. Awesome.
Like I'll probably want to go in and like I've made some little flowers on these bushes and I'll want those to be like a lighter color.
Yeah, nice colorful color. So how long would you say you spend on a piece from like start to finish?
I think I average about 20 hours for a full illustration. So like edge to edge. This one doesn't have a full background, so it wouldn't take quite that long.
Okay. For a second, I thought you were talking about this one would take 20 hours, and I was thinking,
oh no.
Oh.
That'd
Okay.
be too much time. No, but if most of the illustrations I've done to this point are not vignettes, they're full edge to edge, full background,
Yeah.
a couple of characters, and those will take me around 20 hours.
Okay, cool.
That's the other thing that Twitch is great for. You're actually recording every time you're working, and you can see how long you've streamed.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
very easy to, first of all, you have your whole process recorded, which Procreate's great at that too. But before, Procreate was there to tell you that you've spent 18 hours in this file. Would you like to see a time lapse?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, if you're on Twitch streaming your art, unless you're working off stream, you've got the whole process recorded. They save it for you. You can export and do little time lapses. I've done that. I've got a YouTube channel that has like 8 time lapse videos on it, and that's it. But that's mainly if you go to my website. I've got some of my time lapses embedded on there.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
I don't really direct people to my YouTube channel, but I've got my time lapses on there. And maybe I'll want to make the bunny's noses like a bit pink.
All bunnies require pink noses.
This is a bit too purple, but we'll go with it.
And all bunnies require pink ears.
And then I've put like a pattern on these bunnies, so maybe I want to, I don't know, make them like a tan color. That's kind of like a skin tone.
I'm always
Try
tempted to
this.
just take bits like pink noses and pink ears and be like, super pink, the pinkest of pink.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just growing up being a redhead. My mom always told me that like I couldn't wear pink or red or orange because it just looks terrible with my hair color.
Aw.
And she taught me to lean into the colors that I looked good in, which are mostly earth tones. And I
Okay.
think that comes through in my art. I think I lean more toward those like natural, I wouldn't say they're muted. They're not like pastel tones, but they're all a bit earthier.
Okay.
Like even my reds are a bit more of like a rusty
Yeah, they're
red
not red.
than like, yeah, like you'd think of a red t-shirt.
That's a good brown. I like that brown. So there's some value variance in the brush you're using. Are you using like a watercolor kind of brush, or is this still the same?
It's still the Pastel Palooza, but its opacity is set at 67%.
Okay.
I know Will uses like the keyboard shortcuts to get like exact numbers. I end up playing with mine a whole lot while I'm drawing.
Yeah. I try to get like a standardized brush set, and then I always just mess with it.
Maybe I want to put a bit darker brown on his back. My dog is now begging to get back up on my lap.
Aw, now that he's scared away the ghost.
Oh, yes. He's loved me working from home. I don't think his feet have touched the ground in over a month. It's like carry me everywhere. Yeah, but the great thing about this clipping mask is later, if I decide that I don't like him brown, I can turn it off. Or if I decide that I would rather him be a purple bunny.
Yeah, you can just go and fill.
Yeah, I can go in with just,
Yeah.
now he's purple.
So much purple.
And I think that's too, like where sometimes I won't do a color study But I can always change colors like that. So if I go in and I want to change the colors of these front bushes, I can alpha lock this layer and say like, oh, well, maybe I want this to be a fall scene and I'd rather these bushes be more of a yellow color. And I can play around with colors that way. And I normally do that before I get into adding detail with the colors. So I wouldn't have these bunnies have the pink or anything on them. And I'd get my flats to a place where I like them and then start going in and adding detail.
How much do you use the line work for the shadows? Like, I mean, like on the bushes there, you have a lot of shadow produced by the line work versus going in and coloring in shadow.
That's something where I'm trying to find the ideal balance. I really like the texture of the pencil, so I tend to like it when there's quite a bit of that. So I like to get it to the point where like my black and white pencil drawings kind of stand on their own. And you look at those and that's almost a complete piece in itself. And then the color is just kind of like a glaze over top of it. Sometimes that gets a little bit too dark for children's publishing. So I've been working on also pulling back a lot. There's a piece on my website of a girl in a boxcar racing her stuffed animals. And on that one, I could probably pull it up.
Yeah, I've been trying to do the same thing by getting like all my line work very finished and standalone before coloring. It seems to help.
So I don't have, maybe I do. Blog. I have it here. Nope, I don't have the drawing for this one. I do have it around here someplace, but I'm not sure where. But this one, I used a lot less line work in the actual pencil drawing. You can see that most of the shading here is done digitally, but I kind of like the look of it more when it's actually in pencil. So you can see on this one, the pencil mark around the girls is definitely real pencil shading.
Yep.
Yeah, I did some experiment with this method earlier with one piece that I don't think I've showed anywhere. What I did is I did two layers of two layers of pencil. So the one layer is the main pencil drawing, and then I did a shading in a different layer, and I used sort of similar approach as you did to take the background away, and then I merged them in Photoshop so I can color the shading layer differently than the line layer. But it gets quite complicated, but it gives a bit more flexibility if you want like the texture, but you don't want the texture to be very dark. So that's how I solve it. Like for if I would do this piece, like I would probably choose the shadow below the bench to be in a separate piece of paper, and then the shadow of the plants, the pot plants, and then I can do completely different color of that shadow compared to the rest of the line.
And I can do that here by just coloring on my line layer.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, so I can go through and change the color of the line here.
I guess it's a little challenging for me to do that because, especially with the character. So if I want the texture and a bit of a outline work, then it's kind of like I have to be quite careful in the color on it. So that's why I ended up making multiple layers of doing it. I don't know, maybe it's just I'm just doing it a very complicated way. Yeah.
No, I think things just get complicated when you
yeah.
Yeah, but I can like decide that I want this hatching on him to be yellow.
Totally.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, I've started trying to keep a layer for my line work, like shape work, if you get what I mean, and a layer for like all the detail line work, like the hairs and little occlusion shadows, and I don't know,
I
tree
like being
bark.
able to knock the background back a ton too. So this one doesn't have a real background, but I tried to make the lines while I was drawing on that back bush a little bit lighter than the lines in the front. And if I think I wasn't successful enough with that, like at the end of this drawing, I'll probably go through and end up picking a lighter color and like knock that line work back even more by just making it exactly the same color as the bush. That's probably not great. But maybe I'll like select the color of the bush and just make it a tiny bit darker than the bush and go through with that. That may be too light, but I can knock things back that way.
Yeah.
I think the frog piece is probably a good example of where I did that. So you can see in the background how this tree line, the lines go orange. I've just taken like a color of orange and colored over my line work. And then back here, they're a bit more of a purple. And then as you get to the front of the piece, they become more like of a dark black color. And it adds a bit of atmosphere. I'm going to turn this back to brown for right now. Yes. And that's the other thing about the mask, is if I just decide that, like, man, I really screwed up that layer, I can just move the mask onto another layer and change it back to whatever color I want.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably it for my process. I didn't get this piece finished, but I think at least you get a pretty good idea of how I work.
We've got a definite, we essentially saw the whole thing, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, just a shortened version.
I'll
finish this later.
No, that's awesome. Very cool. I do love the bunnies.
Thanks.
I do love the bunny in the bottom right.
Yeah, I really want to spend some time developing these bunny characters, because you've read my story. I want to be able to kind of pick apart the different rabbits in the scenes and have them become their own characters. And for page to page, you can actually identify the rabbits.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, if that's it, and there are no further questions, I think that was a real nice streamlined process there, honestly enough. Few questions because it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that works, right? All right, so next week, if I remember correctly, we have Josh White showcasing something. I think Josh is here today. Yeah, he says he's going to do his process, and he's got a list of tools that are super useful for communication. So we'll see some interesting stuff from Josh next week. And I will assume Josh will have a microphone by that time. Lol. I just said lol. Oh my gosh. Okay. I've been online way too much.
Need to talk to some real life people.
I need to talk to some real life people. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. And
Thank you.
Yeah. And next week, same bat time, same bat channel.
Nice. And, thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, I will see you guys later.